What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to this classic class of 1971 Honda CL350 K3 Scrambler. Wasn't that a mouthful? Well, if you remember on the last video, I talked a little bit about the starter not working because the starter solenoid was missing. We also didn't have a proper battery in the bike at the time. So I've done quite a bit to the bike since the last video. I'm going to show you a couple of things I've done, and then today we're going to go through and we're going to get this starter functioning, hopefully. So let's take a look at this thing. All right, so here we are. As you can see, I've got her blown apart quite a bit. The carburetors were leaking on the last video when I got it running, so I went ahead and took them off, and I'm going through those. I've got them ready to go. I'm just not going to put them back on right now. Also, as you can see, I've got a nice shiny new battery in there. It's a gel type battery, so I expect that to be around for a while, hopefully. I did go through and I put in a blade style fuse instead of the old glass fuse. Just, you know, those are easier to find, obviously, and just didn't make no sense to not do that. I did get a used solenoid, as you can see right there, starter solenoid. This is my new gel battery. Pulled a pretty nice fender out of my parts stash and cleaned it up. Picked up a taillight bracket on eBay. Got all new hardware on that bad boy. That's the way I do things. Got a reproduction taillight on there. It's the right style. Although it's reproduction, there's a couple things I'm not happy with, but it's going to do for now. And it works, by the way. Oops, almost forgot that we got our Iowa license plate already. CL350 K3 in Russell Wells County. Let you read between the lines on that. I also went through and I put new front brake lever, new clutch lever, pivot bolts, and a new front brake cable, new clutch cable. Both of those were very sticky previously. So, you know, I fully intend to do a ride video on this, and I want it to be safe and easy to ride. So, yeah, don't pay no attention to that. Got a points cover for it off of eBay. Got a new stator cover off of eBay. I polished on that a little bit. Again, you can see the new battery from this side, and then you can see that I've got everything pulled out of here. But let's go ahead, and I want to get this up on the operating table here, and let's see what we can do about this non-functioning starter. You can also see I've got my buddy Preston Fraser up on the big screen here, larger than life, checking out one of his videos while I work. All right, got the old girl up on the operating table. Let me just show you real quick what's going on with the electric start. In the last video, if you remember, I said the electric start didn't work because it was missing the starter solenoid, and I didn't really have a proper battery wired in there either. So I fixed all that, got a used starter solenoid put on there, got a brand new proper sized battery, got it all connected up and wired properly. And here's what we've got. Notice that taillight works. So when you push the starter, this is what you get. So what you're hearing there is the starter is spinning. It's spinning the chain that goes down to the rotor that's connected to the crankshaft. But down inside there, on the back side of that rotor, there's a clutch mechanism. And that clutch clearly is not engaging, and that's a pretty common issue with these old bikes. So one more time, I'll just show you. And yeah, I think the starter probably needs new bushings too, but we can get into that later. But let me get this thing, tore down. We're going to go through this, and just so you know, I like how people get weird on me and leave the video after like 5 minutes. You know, if you're here for this, we're going to do a rebuild on this starter clutch. This is a how-to video. It's going to get very technical, so just stick around. You might learn something, and it might come in handy someday. So let me get this thing set up real quick. Okay, let's jump right in here. So in order to get to that starter clutch mechanism, this cover, this entire cover has to come off. I also went ahead and I've removed the shifter because the shifter normally sits here, which would get in the way. I had the shifter off because earlier I put a new clutch cable on, which required me to remove this cover. That's all taken care of. As you can see, I've spent hours polishing this cover. Not really, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pop that off too, because I don't want to mess that up. Again, you know, I can't stress this enough. I talk about it all the time when you're working on these old Hondas. You need to get JIS screwdrivers. Stop screwing around with your Phillips screwdrivers. They're not the right ones, and that's why you have so much trouble, and that's why you see guys in here with impact drivers trying to get screws out, drilling screw heads off. I rarely have to do that now that I've got the proper screwdrivers. So let me go ahead and pop this cover off real quick. Okay, so when you do this, before you panic, when you pop this cover off, if you do it in this order, you may see some oil coming out here. That's okay. There's supposed to be oil inside of this enclosure. As a matter of fact, there was a drop. I'm going to throw something under there, start catching that. As far as this oil goes, there's a couple ways to skin this possum before you eat it. You can lay the bike over at about a 30-degree angle, get all the oil to slosh to the other side of the crankcase. That'll keep it from leaking out. Obviously up here on the operating table, that's not really a viable option. You could also just deal with it, or you could drain the oil. I was actually going to drain the oil on this because, as you saw in the last video, I woke it up after, you know, probably 20 years of being asleep, and it didn't have any oil in it, so I put fresh oil in it. One of the things I discovered was one of the carburetors had a hole in the float, so she was running a little hot, and I think I may have got a little bit of gas in the crankcase. So I was going to change the oil anyway. You know, why not? But apparently a gorilla,
zookeeper,
gorilla, must have put the drain plug on, because I cannot for the life of me get the drain plug out to drain the oil. I've even tried it I've tried my electric impact. I haven't gotten medieval on it yet with the air impact, but guys and gals, when you put these oil plugs in, the only thing they're holding to the bike is holding the oil inside. You don't need to torque them down to 250,000 foot-pounds. So hopefully I can get that out of there. I'm sure I will eventually. But anyway, you're probably going to see some oil dripping out here throughout this process because I'm unable to drain the oil. So the other thing is in order to get this cover off and get to the top screws up here and whatnot, this pipe on the left side cylinder needs to come off. I think it's going to be fairly straightforward for me on this, since I don't have the you know, holy grail original muffler that kind of ties these two together. So I think I can just remove this one pipe off. That'll get us access to inside there. So let me pop that off there real quick. This is a 12mm nut on these flanges here. Okay, you've got these collars in there. If you work on the small bikes, you're familiar with these, like your CT70s and whatnot. Now let's see if this thing, well, don't get that lucky very often. Let me set this to the side. Okay, so on this cover, you've got several GIS screws holding it on there. I've went through, already broke torque on the ones I could get to, but there were a couple here that I couldn't. So let me pop those loose real quick. Notice how that GIS screwdriver is working out for me, right? No drama. Okay, let me take these screws out real quick. One thing to note when you get ready to slip this off of here, you've got your lighting coil, stator, whatever you want to call it. There are wires that are connected to that, so don't just yank this off. You need to very carefully pull that off, and we're just going to set it to the side. Okay, got all the screws out of there. I don't know if this cover's ever been off, and if it's going to give us a little bit of grief in the process, but it looks like it's on there pretty good. So give me a second here, and I'm gonna get that loosened up, and then we'll slip it off. Okay, I got that cover loosened up. I've already got a, a small oil spill going on here. It's like I said, don't panic. That's normal. It'll be fine. I'm also going to try to preserve this gasket the best I can as I pull this off here, because I'm not going to put a new gasket on it right now, because I believe the next person that gets this bike's probably going to tear all this down. This is all going to get polished and all that good stuff. It takes a little bit of force to pull this off because this is a big magnet and it's wanting to hold that on there. So just take your time, work it off. And right now, I think, there we go. You see that magnet's really getting into it. So this is not going to swing too far out of the way, and you just be very, very careful with it. You're just going to kind of have to work around that. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie that up with something so I can easily get in here and do what I got to do. So give me 1 second and I'll do that. Okay, I've got that cover tied up out of the way. Brought you in here for a little better perspective. I had to also add a little drain pan here. We went from a little bit of oil dripping out to a full-on oil change. That's fine. It's coming out anyway. But I'm going to show you real quick. So here's your what I call the rotor. This is your starter chain. And I want you to see what's going on here. So I'm going to just bump the starter, and I want you to watch that chain. And you see the chains turning, right? And that noise you're hearing is coming from the starter, probably the bushings, no big deal. So you can see the chain spinning, but she ain't spinning the engine. So what has to happen here is your clutch assembly is on the back side here. So we're going to have to pull this rotor. And this is, I'm telling you to be careful when you're doing this. Get the right tools so you don't mess anything up. Because I don't know why, they built hundreds of thousands of these 350s in the late 60s, early 70s. But I'll tell you what, some of these parts are just hard to find. And when you find them, they want, a pretty penny for them. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to pull the bolt on the rotor. And this is a 14 millimeter. I'm going to use my impact, and I'm going to be very careful here. And I'm going to pop that loose, hopefully. I doubt it's ever been off. Okay, and it cooperated. That's good. Okay, so I'm going to set that to the side. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove this little retainer. This little retainer is what kind of keeps this sprocket here and the chain kind of in check. And that's a 10 millimeter bolt. Zip that off there real quick. And none of this stuff requires you to get crazy with it. You don't want to break or strip threads or anything like that. Okay, so we've got that off there. Last thing we need to do is we need to pop this rotor loose. And this is, you can look at it like a flywheel if you want. Because of that, you need a puller. And I've got a puller. I picked up this little tool from Common Motors. I'll put a link in the description for this. You can get them on Amazon too. This was just the first one I found, and I needed it right away. So this actually threads in here. And again, take your time, thread that in nicely. And you'll kind of feel it bottom out. And then this is a 17 millimeter. And we're going to turn that clockwise, the opposite of the way we turn that bolt, and that should pop this loose. Now, when this pops loose, don't get all excited, because we don't want to pull this completely off. We want to keep this sprocket kind of engaged back here on the back of this as we take this off. So it's going to be kind of a bring this off, bring off the gear off the starter. And as a matter of fact, I'll go ahead and do that now. You can slip that right off there. Don't worry. There's no, issues with alignment or anything like that. And you see that thing is a magnet. It just grabbed onto that chain. Okay, we got that off there. and that actually can go on either way. There's no specific side to it, so we're fine there. Okay, so let's see if we can get this rotor popped loose, and I am cautiously doing this because I do not want to mess up any of these parts. You see that just pop loose. So I'm gonna hold that sprocket there on the back. Well, okay, stop. There it goes. I want to keep that all together, and I'm going to show you why, because this is where your clutch is down in here. Let me get that out of there so I can lay it flat. You see that big old bearing right there, that big old ball bearing? That's where that oil's coming through. That's what's keeping that chain and everything and this clutch mechanism lubed up. So hopefully you can see that. There's some springs and rollers down in there. You see the rollers, there they went. And what typically happens is let me get those out of there. The springs are the weak spot here. And this thing's, it's magnetized, so everything wants to stick to it. So you've got rollers, which these actually look pretty good. You've got these little cups, and shoot, I can see already, you probably can't see it in the video, but there is a part of the spring is broken off down inside of that cup. So we are definitely doing the right thing here by rebuilding this clutch assembly. Get that other roller out of there. Now I suspect I'm gonna have a little bit of a challenge finding the rest of that broken spring, but those cups and the springs, those are down inside of here, and they're running this way, and then the rollers are running this way. Hopefully you can see that. But I'll tell you what, let me get this all disassembled, as I've got new parts to put in there. And also you're going to have to remove, oh, look at that. That screw's loose. See that? I'm loosening that by hand, which is another common issue with these, see? So we are, like I said, we are definitely on the right track here, and I can see the threads on that screw are wallered up a little bit, so I'm going to have to go see if I've got another one of these in my stash. But yeah, we'll have to take these screws out as well. These, again, JIS screws, and let's just see. Oh, look at that. None of them, apparently. That was the only one that was remotely tight. So, yeah, she was definitely due for some service. I'll just go ahead and finish taking this apart so you can see what's going on here. That screw looks good. I should have another one of those screws. That screw looks good. And then here we go. This comes apart. And you can kind of see there's a locating dowel pin right there. And you know, when you do this, you want to go in here with some brake cleaning stuff and clean up all these friction surfaces real good and whatnot. But I'm gonna, off camera, get everything out of the inside of here, and then I'll walk you through putting it back together. Okay, got all the parts cleaned up. Strangely, I didn't find any springs except for the remnants of one in one of those little cups. So, you know, I don't know. Bubba's probably been in here. That's kind of normal. But I went ahead and I've got one of the cups and springs in there. I don't know if you can see it, but this is going to be kind of a process. I'll try to go through it, but you know, it's going to be tedious, and I don't want to bore you with it. But the gist of it is there's a hole in here. Spring goes in. Open end of the cup goes on top of that spring, and then those will get compressed with the rollers in there. And you know, if you find yourself doing this job, you see I've got a pile of OEM Honda parts here. This is all the stuff to redo this, and it's available, still available from Honda, so no issues there. I did find another screw. It's just a tad shorter, but it'll be fine. So let me go ahead and I'll pop one of these open here, and we'll try to kind of walk through one of them real quick, and then we'll speed it up and keep from boring you. So you've got your cup and your spring, and that spring is very fine and tiny. So what you want to do is, what I'm doing is I'm putting the spring inside the opening on the cup, and then I'm going to insert it into the hole here, and just, whoop, see, it already popped out on me. You've got to be really careful with this. I'd hate to lose one of these springs at this point, because that means I'm waiting on parts again. So you just got to take your time, make sure you're in an area where you can, find a part if it pops off. So that one's in there, and then let me throw one more in. Okay, you can see here I've got 3 brand new rollers, and what has to happen is these little cups have to be compressed back inside these openings, and then the roller is going to sit in there. It's going to go in like this. So I think, the best thing I've found here is a little pick, and I know you probably can't see everything I'm doing, but you get the gist of it. Compress that little cup, plunger, whatever you want to call it, back inside the hole. Well, if I can get it to go. Okay, I've got that one in there. I'm holding it with my finger. I'm going to drop that roller in there, and then I'm going to release the spring and let that plunger with spring hold the roller in. It's just a tedious process. A little pick helps to hold that in there when you're trying to position it. Let me go ahead and drop the other 2 in here, and then we'll see what happens next. Okay, I've got them all in there. I've got the 3 brand new rollers, the 3 new cups or plungers, and 3 new springs. The spring tension is what's holding those rollers in there right now. That's it, and the springs are not very strong, so be kind of gentle with that as you're getting ready to go. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to slap this back together very carefully. We'll put this locating pin back in here. Set this back on there. Okay, now I'm going to very carefully lower this down on top of there without hopefully losing those rollers. And like I said, there's an alignment pin. That's the easiest way to get it all lined up. And we just won. Okay. Now I need to run these screws back in here. If you remember, I told you I had to get a new one. I am going to put a little bit of thread locker on these. As you saw, they come loose. It's a common problem. Sorry for the next person that has to tear this apart, but I'm going to put some thread locker on here just to be safe. So let me do that real quick. All right, we're going to run these screws in again, JIS. It would be a good idea to not cross-thread those. They don't feel like they're going in easy. Start over and try again. Snug all those up. Once I got them snugged up, I will go back, and now I'm going to give them a good torque. These are definitely something you probably do not want coming out while it's running. And by the way, on the missing springs, there's no way for those springs to get back from here back into the crankcase. So I don't know where they are. Probably somebody was in there screwing around with it at some point in time. So that happens. All right. We're about ready to slap this rotor back on there. And hopefully when you took this apart, you took note that there's a woodruff key right here. And that aligns with the keyway on this rotor. But last thing we need to do is slap this in there and hold it in place while we reinstall that. But I'm going to put just put a little bit of oil on this real quick before we put it back together. Okay, got a little bit of oil on there now. This should just drop right down in there. Like I said, it should. There it goes. Okay, and I can already feel it. Look at that. It'll turn one way but not the other. That means we've got positive engagement of that clutch assembly. We're in really good shape right now. So I'm going to slip this back on here. Again, line up your keyway with the woodruff key on the crankshaft and hold that sprocket as you do this so it does not come apart. And you'll know when you got it on that keyway. You'll feel it. So we've got that on there. Need to run that main bolt in real quick with our 14 millimeter. I am going to use my impact to zip this on. And it's a good idea to start that by hand first. You definitely do not want to strip those threads on that crankshaft, or you're going to be in for a much bigger teardown than what we just did. Okay, so I'm going to zip this on there real quick, clockwise. One more just in case. Okay. All right. Really the only thing left now is to throw the sprockets and chains back on and see what this bad boy does. Get this chain back on here. That darn magnetic thing there just grabbed right onto the chain. Okay, there we go. Get our gear there to put back on the starter. Okay, get that. Lastly, like I said, we're doing a small oil change here. Don't forget to put the sprocket retainer back in place. Got two little tabs, one goes on the front and one goes on the back side of that sprocket. Okay. Zip that on there. Okay, I think this is the moment of truth, aka the moment we've all been waiting for. So I'm going to go hit the start button, and we want to see this turning. All right, I'm sure you saw that. I'm going to call that a win. So I won't bore you with putting this cover back on. You know how to put screws in and whatnot. But that's the process. As you can see, it wasn't super difficult. You know, really just required one special tool, and I'm not kidding you. I paid $10 for that. And in today's world, that's not a lot for a special tool for a Honda. So I'm pretty happy with that tool. Obviously, you saw it work. I will put again a link down in the description for that. So let me get this mess cleaned up here, and we'll talk about what's coming up next. All right, that's about going to wrap it up for this one. I hope you all enjoyed that little how-to on how to rebuild that starter clutch. This applies to more than just the 350s. A lot of your older twin-cylinder Hondas have the same type of setup, so feel free to give it a shot on your bike, even if it's not a 350. You'd be surprised how similar they are. And again, remember that I had all OEM parts. There's no issue finding parts. So, we've got a couple more videos coming up on this before we do something really big with it, so stay tuned. But I think the next one you're probably going to see things are going to be a little more refined. We're going to have the carbs back on. They're going to be rebuilt. We'll probably have the rear turn signals mounted. All the lights will be functioning, and we'll probably be ready for a ride. And then, not long after that's going to be the big reveal on this bike. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.